sisters. I hope you're all well. And I'm going to make space here. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to be sharing the message this morning. And thank you, Reverend Dew, for the chance to speak. I appreciate. You know, this way I know at least this one time my wife will be listening to me. That was a joke. And let's see here. Share my screen. Okay, so today's sermon, the topic is what motivates me, faith and Hyojeong. And especially I wanted to recognize a wonderful sermon given this morning by Crescencia, and it was wonderful to see him and Reverend Dunkley. And she spoke about putting our faith into practice, that you need to walk the talk. It's a very common expression, that people learn not from what you say as much as from what you do. So kind of along with that, maybe this can be helpful. And this is a question about what motivates me. And that's what I'd like to share about today and look at some examples from our true mother of what motivates her. And I really think this issue of faith and Hyojeong is an important one to talk about. And Reverend Dew talked about this in an earlier sermon, and it really got me to thinking about faith and Hyojeong. All right, so let's see here. First, Reverend Dew, he wants to have a group discussion afterwards, so I thought I'd give you a little taste of that. And maybe you could already be thinking about this topic. What are the things that help to keep me motivated to overcome challenges and maintain my life of faith or a life of Hyojeong? Okay, so what are the things in your life that really help you to keep you motivated? Okay, so that's the topic of discussion. And here's a definition of faith from the dictionary. Firm belief in something for which there's no proof. And another definition, complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And I asked Reverend Dew for a definition of Hyojeong, and he suggested this, to have a filial, that says Hyo, and heart, Jeong, so a filial heart. So this is faith and Hyojeong. And I want to compare these two. And faith is actually mentioned in the divine principle, and it's part of God's original ideal of creation. But it may not be the same kind of faith you think of when you think of the New Testament age kind of faith, or the way faith is talked a lot about in the current world in churches. Okay, so here's a few points. So the presence of faith in God's original plan of creation. So first of all, we all know the expression, right? Absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience. So True Father teaches that this comes from God, that God is a God of absolute faith. Now, is that faith, is that God believing in himself? I don't think so. Did God have to, make effort to believe that he existed? I don't think so. This is more faith or trust in his creation. There was no guarantee that his children, we, would have a heart of Hyojeong, that we would have a heart of filial piety, that we would love God first. There's no guarantee because love is not under God's control. That was our responsibility. So here, absolute faith, I believe, is talking about his absolute faith that his kingdom of heaven through his children would be fulfilled. Here's another point. This is from the divine principle. Why did God nurture the faith of Adam and Eve by giving them the commandment, do not eat of the fruit? This is from the chapter on the fall of man. So it's asking the question, why was God attempting to nurture the faith of Adam and Eve? So here we see the word faith in regards to Adam and Eve in the garden. So Adam and Eve needed to have faith in the garden. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And here a third passage for the divine principle. For Adam to realize the purpose of creation, he was supposed to fulfill two conditions. First, Adam should have established the foundation of faith. The condition to establish this foundation was to keep strictly to God's commandment. So here we see this faith is not about believing in God or having, trust that God exists, but it's about finding the heart which wants to maintain God's commandment. Okay, so this is a very special kind of faith, right? And let's look at the word faith in the New Testament. What we commonly hear about all the time if you go to a church or something like that. And in Romans 10:9-11, St. Paul spoke, if you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart, okay, so that's very important. So you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For one believes with the heart and so is justified, and one confesses with the mouth and so is saved. So here faith is really to believe in something. It's believing that Jesus existed, that he was raised from the dead, and that he is Lord, right? That's where this faith is what it's talking about here. And in Hebrews, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So what's hoped for? In the Christian faith, what's hoped for is our salvation. So here faith is kind of like, okay, I believe I'm going to be saved. I believe I'm going to go to heaven. I believe that Jesus is Lord. I believe he was raised from the dead. So here we see faith is about believing in these things. Okay? So what I want to share here, and what I think Reverend Dew was sharing with us in his sermon, is this is not the kind of faith that God was looking for in the Garden of Eden for Adam and Eve originally. And this is not the kind of faith that God is hoping that we will express in our own daily life. But God is looking for something deeper than this. And it really is about motivation. That's the key here. So if we're just believing in our salvation, we're just believing God's going to save us, if we just believe these things, then it's really not the kind of motivation which can create the kingdom of God. Okay? So faith and Hyojeong. Faith is to believe in something, but Hyojeong is focused on the motivation, the kind of heart that we have. In other words, what motivates me? And I can't think of a better example for this than True Mother. And if you're reading her memoir, which I hope you are, there's so many examples there in which she shows the example of what kind of faith, what kind of heart we should be having. So here's a few examples. Page 90. Because I knew God's sorrowful grief, a courage based on my faith. So it's based on faith, right? A courage in God rose up within me. I felt I could gratefully accept whatever might be asked of me. So what is this? Mother's expressing this heart towards God, this sense of courage, determination, gratitude, that she's ready to do anything for God. So it's not any kind of faith which is like, oh, I believe I'm going to get something. No, it's about this faith brings out this kind of heart of motivation to want to do anything she could for God. Here's another example, page 91. I determined, okay, these words are so important. So she's making this determination. She's not waiting for something or believing something that's going to be given to her. No, she says, I'm determined that I would engraft onto our couple all of humankind in heaven and on earth, making them into God's good children. So here, True Mother's talking about this determination of her heart. So this is the true meaning of faith, which Adam and Eve needed to have in the garden, which is to love God, put God first. Here's a third example, page 91 again. I knew that God had prepared me as a heavenly bride, and this was God's predestined providence. I had no question or doubt in my mind. In other words, she doesn't need to have faith that she's been called. She doesn't need to have faith that she's God's daughter. She absolutely knows it. And then what? That she says, I had only the desire to keep going on the path. So she's talking about her motivation. She just has this desire to love God and to make a victory for God. Here's her words at the time of her matching and her blessing. I pledge before God and Father Moon, no matter how difficult the path may be, I will complete God's providence of restoration during my lifetime. And then I pledge one more time, I will do whatever it takes to fulfill our Heavenly Parents' will. I have defined and lived my life with that commitment. So Hyojeong is this, it's this motivating heart, It's like, I want so much to make God happy. I want so much to fulfill this for the sake of God. So that's the kind of heart that is Hyojeong. And that's what God needed in the faith of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And here's mother's words standing before true father's body in 2012. I promised in tears, by the end of my days, I will absolutely bring about the settlement of Cheongguk on this earth. So this is, again, true mother's heart of Hyojeong. So it's like this incredible, of course, faith is there. She has faith she's going to be victorious. She has faith it's going to happen. But it's really about her commitment. Okay? All right. So then, let's take a look at her example in her life. First of all, her 3 years of devotion to true father. Every day preparing meals. Every day going to meet with true father where his body was being kept, where his body had been buried. Every day, day after day, true mother kept this incredible heart of devotion to true father, these 3 years, this 3-year course. Okay? And then came Foundation Day. Let's read her words on Foundation Day. I've opened all doors through Foundation Day. I've opened the doors wide for anyone who will resolve to join the ranks of the filial, the loyal, and the faithful, and translate beliefs into action. So that goes in harmony with today's sermon, the national sermon, right? We're going to put it into action. So here it's about filial piety, it's about loyalty, and the faithful heart that does what? That puts it into action. Then she goes on, practicing absolute faith, absolute love, and absolute obedience until his or her last moment on earth, centering on true parents. So this is what True Mother is calling us to do. This is the kind of faith True Mother wants us to have. Now let's just look briefly at how True Mother demonstrates this amazing faith, this amazing heart by the actual way she lived her life. So number one, I wanted to bring up this example of the International Association for Parliamentarians for Peace, right? 2016. By that time, she talks about how she had gone to 6 continents, 20,000 people, 2,500 incumbent parliamentarians representing 190 nations. She went, in 2016 to Korea, Nepal, Burkina Faso, London, Costa Rica, Paraguay, Zimbabwe, Tokyo, and Washington, D.C., all in 2016 to initiate this effort to actually, fulfill the promise that she had made to God. Okay. Let's look at the example of all the providential rallies, the summits, the blessing ceremonies that she conducted, declaring different heavenly nations, the proclamation of heavenly nations. Okay, beginning in 2017, at Madison Square Garden, right? The 80,000 rally in Korea, the rally that took place in Zimbabwe, and the blessing of 60,000 couples in Senegal, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, in Japan, in South Africa, in Sao Tome and Principe, and then in Albania in Europe. So here we see this incredible schedule, 2017 to 2019, Mother going out to the world, just pouring out her life energy. True Mother's 40-day course. In the memoir, she talks about this 40-day course from mid-November to the end of the year 2019. In this time period, she went to Cambodia, she went to Taiwan, she went to Niger, Africa, to South Africa again. She went to Palau, Oceania, represented by her daughter-in-laws, right? And she went represented by Sunjin to the Dominican Republic. So this was her 40-day course leading up to the end of 2019. Then let's briefly take a look at her incredible investment in Christianity. It's amazing. 2014, right, in Las Vegas, that's when she first, she met with the ACLC. It's the first time she ever proclaimed publicly that she was the only begotten daughter of God. That took place here in Las Vegas at the ACLC gathering. And then from there, the Peace Starts With Me rallies. July 15th, Madison Square Garden. In 2018, Nassau Coliseum. Then Los Angeles. We all remember, of course, here in Las Vegas. And then going to Korea, establishing the Korean Clergy Leadership Conference in 2019. And then it all concludes at the end of 2019, when she establishes the World Clergy Leadership Conference in New Jersey at the Prudential Center. So, I mean, just amazing what True Mother did in these years following, True Father's ascension. So this is true Hyojeong. It is not just faith in something. It's not just belief something's going to happen, for me, but it means I'm going to invest everything. I'm going to commit everything for God's will to be accomplished. And here at the 2020 summit, she fulfilled everything. And I wanted to give this quote from True Mother's determination in 1960, around the time of her blessing. She says, this is from her memoir, "During my lifetime, my beloved husband and I will bring to a conclusion the history of the providence of restoration through indemnity, during which God has laboriously toiled. I know that what hurts God's heart more than anything else are the religious conflicts that take place in his name. Without fail, we will end them." The True Mother is asking us. She's saying, let's all not think about our own hearts or our own situations or our own personal lives, but let's all just stop and think about God's situation. And when we think about God's situation and how painful God's heart has been, she says here, I know that what hurts God's heart more than anything. So she's saying to us, this is what I know, this is what I've experienced with God's heart. So she's asking us to have faith in this experience of God's heart. And she believes that we also can have this same experience of God's heart, and we can find the same kind of determination. Okay. So these are the points I wanted to share this morning about faith in Hyojeong. You can think of faith is necessary for salvation, okay? But it's more external. Faith is needed for salvation. But Hyojeong, this heart of this filial heart, it is salvation. Do you understand? When you find the heart of Hyojeong, when you actually love God and you're just motivated to want to bring victory for God in your life, in your family, in your nation, in the world, when you find that heart of Hyojeong, that is the kingdom of heaven. That is salvation. So salvation, you need faith for salvation. But Hyojeong is in itself salvation. So that's what I would like to leave you with. And again, remember these points. I think Reverend Du will put up a slide also. The discussion is, what are the things that help to keep me motivated to overcome challenges and maintain my life of faith or my life of Hyojeong? So thank you very much, and God bless you all.